We have seen some really good freshmen in college football over the last few years, and especially in 2022. Except there is no better freshman in college football right now than LSU linebacker Harold Perkins. Not only did he make SEC history this past weekend, but he's been on an absolute tear this entire season. Looks like one of the best linebacker prospects we have seen in years, and could go down as the best linebacker in LSU football history. Not only is he an incredible player, but he has a super inspiring story, has taken over college football, and in today's video, by popular request, I want to talk about the rise of Harold Perkins, go through how he got to this point, his wild recruitment, how good he has been for LSU, and what we can expect from him in the future. But before we get into it, we're on the road to 100K, and we are so close to that, so if you want to help me out, be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to support today's video, turn on notifications so you never miss when I upload, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I should do next. Now, let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Harold Perkins. Currently, Perkins is one of the best players in the country, and he's only a true freshman. He has 52 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 3 pass deflections, 1 interception, and 2 forced fumbles. He's second in tackles, first in sacks, tied for first in interceptions, and has the most fumbles on the team. Perkins is not only doing this in the best conference, but he's doing it on a very elite defensive team. But in order to understand how Perkins has gotten so good, we first need to go back in time. Like a surprising amount of football players, Harold Perkins was actually affected by Hurricane Katrina. When he was only 2 years old, his mother Bertha moved them from New Orleans to the state of Texas. This was after Hurricane Katrina hit, and he said he doesn't remember much from the event, but his mother will never forget lying on the floor of her sister's house as the storm came rolling through and the walls of her house were shaking. The family was completely terrified as is, but it got even worse as their uncle was actually a police officer in the area, and they didn't know if he was going to make it out alive. Luckily, they all made it through safely, but their family moved to Houston, Texas in search of better opportunity. Perkins always loved football, and his athleticism was God-given. It was always on full display, and when he arrived at Cy Park High School, he went on to put on insane numbers, become a local legend, and a blue-chip recruit that every school in America wished to have. By the time he was a senior at Cy Park, he was a force on both sides of the football. He finished his senior season with 1,194 yards rushing and 18 scores on the ground. In 7 of his 10 games, he went for over 100 yards, he had 3 interceptions, was a dominant linebacker, and had 1 pass deflection. While he definitely could have been a blue-chip running back as well, I guess he came out and said he wanted to be a linebacker, and that is how teams recruited him. He knew where he needed to go to succeed, as he wanted to play in the NFL, wanted to play against the best players, and wanted to play in the conference that would give him the best chance to get his name out there. He knew he needed to go to the SEC. He said, quote, "That is where the dogs are at. That is where the best play. I'm a dog, and that is where dogs go." What's interesting about that is a couple weeks later, he took an official visit to Oregon, which I don't know why he did that if he was so sure on going to the SEC, but ultimately, he probably just had a good experience there and never ended up becoming a dog. He ended up choosing the SEC school closest to home, which was Texas A&M. He would announce his commitment to the Aggies at the Under Armour All-American game, which happened in early January of 2022. He ended up choosing the Aggies over the likes of Texas, Florida, and LSU, and this would give the Aggies another 5-star recruit to add to their arsenal and a chance at the best recruiting class ever. But his recruitment was not over yet, and unfortunately for Aggies fans, you know exactly where this one is going. He decided to reopen his recruitment and took official visits to both Florida and LSU. At this time, Brian Kelly was the new head coach. They had figured out their defensive coordinator, and I guess he wanted to go home because in the weeks leading up to National Signing Day, many began to crystal ball him to LSU. He ended up flipping from Texas A&M to LSU saying, quote, "At the end of the day, I make my own way, I don't join the wave. That's that." He ended up originally picking up a Texas A&M hat, but he put it down and then announced he was headed to LSU, which is now a common trend amongst a lot of big-time recruits. Perkins was an insane athlete, as he was clocked in running a 4.49 40-yard dash, and he saw plenty of time at both running back and linebacker, so he wasn't just a threat on defense. But ultimately, he was going to play linebacker at LSU. When he was asked about being the lone 5-star recruit in Brian Kelly's first class, he said, quote, "I like the class I'm going to be a part of. Everybody has different personalities. Everybody has a chip on their shoulders. I like playing with dudes that have a chip on their shoulder and who are hungry. I'm hungry right now. I'm ready to eat." So what did the scouts have to say about him? Well, they were extremely high on him. One said, quote, "At 6'3", 210 pounds, he has the ability to play sideline to sideline as a defensive eraser. He also has some explosive striking ability. and we continue to see the athleticism on offense, where he's a dynamic running back with the ability to outrun defenses. He possesses the potential to become a multi-year impact starter at a high major level with long-term early round NFL draft upside. That is a lot of praise for a high school senior, and this guy was a huge deal. According to 24/7 Sports, Harold Perkins was a 5-star recruit, the number 2 linebacker, and the 8th best player in the class of 2022. So, how would he end up doing down in Baton Rouge? Ultimately, it was going to be difficult to keep Perkins off the field, but for a true freshman, expectations were not going to be that high despite his 5-star status. In their first game against Florida State, he would have 1 tackle. In week 2, he'd get up to 7 tackles against Southern before he'd have his first big breakout game against Mississippi State. In that game, he finished with 1.5 sacks and 5 total tackles as they would upset Mississippi State 31-16. From there, Perkins would get better and better. He went on to have 7 tackles against New Mexico, had 3 tackles in his first career interception against Auburn, had 3 tackles against Tennessee, and then had 5 tackles and a pass deflection in a road victory over Florida. By this time, LSU was starting to climb back up, but they'd be tested with number 7 Ole Miss. In that game, Perkins would play his best, as he had 5 tackles and a sack in that game, and they ended up beating number 7 Ole Miss 45-20. Because of this, LSU would jump into the college football playoff rankings as a top 10 team for a top 10 showdown against Alabama. On the premier stage against the premier school, Perkins would have a big game. He had a career-high 8 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 pass deflection, as ultimately LSU would defeat number 6 Alabama in overtime after they went for a risky 2-point conversion and got it. Perkins was so excited after this game, but the best was still yet to come for him. This past weekend, when LSU ended up struggling in the cold, Perkins went off. He did the unthinkable, having 8 tackles, 4 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Not only were those 4 sacks absolutely insane, but both of those forced fumbles came at the end of the game when they desperately needed a stop. Can't even begin to describe how unbelievably difficult that is and how big those plays were. He ended up sealing the win for him as well when he would sack quarterback Cade Fortin and Mekhi Wingo would jump on the ball, giving them the win. Perkins was a huge deal before last weekend, but now he was just insane and everyone was talking about him. But the story only gets better. The craziest part was the fact that he was sick before the game. Brian Kelly said, quote, "He just got sick before the game. He threw up as we were going into our team meeting, and I said, hey, you know MJ threw up when he had his greatest game, right?" Apparently Perkins afterwards said, "Who's MJ?" But this truly was an incredible moment for him. He tied LSU's record for sacks in the game, who was previously held by Chuck Wiley, who had 4 back in 1995. Since then, no LSU players had 3 sacks and a forced fumble in a game since at least 2004, according to ESPN statistics. With 4 sacks and 2 forced fumbles, Perkins is just the 4th FBS player to ever have had that stat line and do it in a Power 5 game since Chase Young with Ohio State. Obviously, we know who Young was, as he was a 5-star, a superstar for Ohio State, and ended up getting taken 2nd overall in the draft. Perkins is not only making history for LSU and the SEC, but now he's joined elite company in the college football ranks, and it seems that the sky is going to be the limit for him. His athleticism is incredible, he always seems to know when his team needs to make a big play, and the craziest part about it all is he's only a true freshman. Rarely do we see true freshmen who are this good, and he's going to have extremely high expectations to live up to the next few years. I hope he puts it all together, but for now, Harold Perkins is the best freshman in college football, is a big reason why LSU is this good at this point in the year, and he is just awesome. But what do you guys think? If you're an LSU fan, what do you think of Harold Perkins? Who, in your opinion, is the best freshman in college football? And what player, topic, team, or situation can I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen, including my video about the rise of Marvin Harrison Jr. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.